We use so many disparaging words to describe ourselves, and so we become our worst enemies. And then the other part of that, which kind of goes along with it, is that to actually watch the level of self-judgment that you have in your life. Because if you actually see the level of self-judgment and self-criticism, we start to realize why we short ourselves and why we don't achieve some of the things that we want to achieve.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to my show. My name is Tiffany, and this is Unveiling Journeys. I'm so excited to have a great guest for you today. Let me just tell you a smidge about me. Oh my gosh, I love people. I love people so much. I love their stories. I love sharing stories. I love hearing stories. And what ended up happening is I hear so many cool stories, and I meet so many cool people that I was encouraged to start this show so that I could just be loud about all these neat people I'm meeting. And here's how it works. If you get to know people, you just simply ask, wow, this has been an amazing meeting. How do I get to know more people just like you? It's kind of like asking for a referral so that you can meet more cool people. And most of the time, I'm bubbling over to say, oh, I know people that you need to know. Can I share them with you? And so it sort of just makes the circle go around. And that's why I like hanging out in networking rooms, which is exactly how I met my guest that is going to have a wonderful story to tell you today. And so, with that, what I'm going to do is bring on James. Thank you so much for being here today, James. Tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you're up to right now.
Aloha, everyone. My name, and I'm just going to say this one. My name is James Kawainui, and I'm from Hawaii. My family goes back in Hawaii over 20 generations, and I'm just glad to be here today. You and I had such a good conversation the first time we spoke, so I was like, yes, please, let's come back and do this formally.
100%. Yeah. I can't believe you have 20 generations trackable back in Hawaii. That's phenomenal. That's like, I can't even do that with my generations. That's so cool. Tell everybody a little bit about what you do right now.
What I do right now is I use easiest way for me to explain what I do is I get messages from my ancestors. The 20 generations is the generations of people that have been doing the work that I am doing in this lifetime, which is helping other people. We get to look at where people are inside of their lives. What are the patterns and the places that are holding them back from really knowing what their greatness is? Our superpower, I guess you could say, was understanding energy on multidimensional levels, and inside of the understanding of that energy, it helps us to understand where people are. I'm a studier of people, and I'm always watching human behavior, and we have these preset notions about who we should be and how we should be living our lives, and we're not even aware that those programs are running in the background. So I help people recognize the program, especially the ones that are corrupted or the files need to be deleted or upgraded.
Right. Right. I mean, I could easily name several of those off that you see in people also, or that you struggle with, or I even call it over here, like you see generational family stuff that's going on that they just
Absolutely.
need a break. Right.
Absolutely. Those are the ones that that can be the most challenging to see because we our hard drive or our operating system. I use analogy. So our operating system, which is our brain that comes in, the operating system already has those generational programs and those generational behaviors already programmed into it. So we start our lives and we move through our life, but we're not even aware that those are running. And we get to certain points of our life where sometimes we have awakenings or an awareness. And inside of that awareness goes, oh, wait a minute. And there's a piece, and I don't know if you've ever done this, Tiffany, but you get to this place and you go, "Oh shit, I'm acting like my mom or my dad," or you start to see similarities in where you are in your life to people in your family. And once you start to look at that, then you go, wait a minute, why are we all doing this? You know, why is I worked on someone a few years ago. It was deafness in the family, 4 generations deep, and what was the deafness from? And it wasn't physical. So we see things like that, and it's understanding that, and then going, okay, wait a minute, I don't want to do what they did because I watched all of that happen as I was growing up. So how do I change that?
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. I think there may be a level of like what you think is normal that you're growing up with that you're like, oh, and then you go to the outside world and you're like, wait a minute, maybe this isn't quite so normal. But opposite, it could be something that's good for you or bad for you, or you don't even know, or two much of something. So I love that you're able to bring this. Now, this isn't just like people, like you do this in the corporate space too, right?
I do this in a corporate space because I love working with teams, because to walk into a company or walk into a room and to see the inefficiency and see the clashing of personalities and understanding who or why and why people are making the choices that they are. And also, for a CEO or an executive that's running a team, to be able to work with them, to look at their team and go, okay, how can I do this differently? Or how can I make my team more efficient? And then the reality is that they keep looking outside of themselves to see that. But reality, part of that is actually going, okay, how am I operating? Because when I change my operating system, then the operating system and the things that I see in my world change as well. So
Oh,
more
man,
than anything else, is working with them to understand where they are inside themselves and see what the things that are holding them back or could be.
I love that. There's one thing that I changed that I was so slight, you would think, but it made such a dramatic um, movement in my life was just anytime that I was getting mad or frustrated or weird or I don't know, I would like have to train my brain to go to gratitude. And it's sometimes like at the end of the day, I'm tired, everyone's tired, and I'm doing dishes angry. And I'm like, nope, I'm grateful I'm alive. I'm grateful for the stars. I'm grateful. And you have to start big because you're so mad. And then I'm like, it took me 7 minutes to do dishes. Why was I so mad? And then I'm so grateful. And I can leave with like a refreshed spirit to walk away from gratitude and walk away from the anger. Cause I think you can't occupy the same space at the same time as those negative emotions when you express gratitude.
They can't. And what I talk to people about, and you do it in a beautiful way. When I talk to people about it, I talk to them about interrupting the program, because what happens is once you get running, it's like momentum. It's like a train that doesn't stop. And so then you might realize that the train's running, but you can't jump off the train at that point. So you kind of got to learn how to slow the train down. So if you can create interruption, and I call them interruption points, places where you realize that your brain or your mind is going down a certain road and you go, wait a minute, I don't want to do that. I know where this leads me. It's not a good place. And so why don't I shift that myself? And so part of the way I talk about that is that we are so trained to react to our environment. We're so trained to react to where we are. Now, what happens is that this thing happens and I react to it. And so it happens, I react, there's no space. It's automatic. That's the way that the brain works. It's the way that a computer works. And so what you're talking about is like, it is what I refer to this as my definition of awareness, is the space that I create between what happens and what I do about it. That's the gold right there. That's the gold.
That's cool. That's cool. And it's stuff I've had to learn even more now having kids because I think, oh man, I'm reacting because I'm short. And I had an acronym someone gave me. It was you're hungry, angry, tired, or lonely. You may not react the way that you think. And so sometimes I have to ask myself, am I any of those things right now? And I need to give myself, like you said, more room. I like how you said just more room to take a walk or take a breath to be able to handle this. And I didn't know. I didn't know that you prefer to work with, well, not prefer, but being able to work with teenagers because I think they need more space than anything. Like they need to understand how to regulate with these heavy hormones and emotions that are going through their body.
Well, not only the heavy hormones and emotions, but also the pressure that social media has created.
Think about that. I didn't
Yeah,
have that, so I
pressure that
forget.
social media has created, because when we were growing up, it wasn't, you didn't instantly realize what people were doing. And now, if you're putting out a text or you're putting out something on Insta and nobody answers you, like immediately there's this question of what happened, what did I do, did I get ghosted, and so there's no way of going, well, wait a minute, everybody's living their lives here, and it
Yeah.
and it doesn't revolve. And I think because part of our culture is we feel like, and we've been trained to think that everything revolves around us. And so taking a step back from that. But there's another piece to this, and I don't, for some of the audience, this might be a little strange, but there are teenagers, people, children that are coming in that in some respects have not dealt with this level of human and being human in before. So they have a hard time understanding what the social structure looks like. And it overwhelms them. And so, and not only that, but again, social media, the constant bombardment of the things that are happening are really driving our nervous systems into override. Even a generation ago, 2 generations ago, that didn't happen, not like it
Right.
is now. So not knowing how to regulate your nervous system and to be able to really actually understand what being calm feels like, because most people don't anymore.
Oh my goodness. This is so cool. I feel like we could talk for hours. I know we have before, but let's do this. This is Unveiling Journeys. I want to share like how you got here. Tell me from the beginning. Obviously, we know where you're from. Like what did you think you were going to be as a kid, and what was like your first schooling or first jobs that look like, and then we'll kind of paint like the whole picture of your circle to come back here.
I'll see if I can do this really briefly. I grew up on a coffee farm in Kona.
No way. That's the best ever. That's all I hear about in California is the
Well,
Kona coffee.
you would think, except when you're 8 years old and you're having to pick coffee and do all the work on the farm, then it wasn't such a good place. But I also grew up. I had a very tumultuous childhood. I had a lot of physical and psychological abuse, so I was really fighting for survival when growing up. And I'm the oldest of 8 kids, and so not only was I fighting for my own survival, but I was also watching out for my brothers and sisters, because I had a pretty abusive father who, was an alcoholic and a whole bunch of other things. And so as I grew up, there are a couple things that were very seminal for me when I was 16, and some of you might appreciate this. I got really stoned one night. And inside this vision that I had, I saw myself and my life was, I would get up in the morning, I would go surf, I would work in a hotel in the evening, and then I would just that would be my life. And then eventually I would get married to somebody that felt the same way that I did, and then we would have kids and fight the same way my parents did. And I looked at that and I went, God, I don't want to do that. So I left literally the week after I graduated high school, and I joined the Navy. And I got put in a squadron, and we hunted Russian submarines. That was my first
What?
job out of high school.
That's incredible. That like you turn 18 and you just get to go hunt submarines. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, I just barely turned 19 years old, and I was out, and we were hunting Russian nuclear submarines, which was way different than anything else. And this is back during the Cold War, so we always knew where they were. They always knew where we were. There was a big board, this is before computers, so there was a big board in the Pentagon that had all the little dots on it that needed to be updated. So I was part of that. And then I got out and I got married and I moved to Florida and raised my kids there. And I started working, and I did lots of different things. I mean, my God, I've had about 6 lifetimes in this life. And
Right, right.
I did furniture, and then I built $1 million homes, and then I went to work for a boat company that I worked for 17 years, and I literally worked my way from the bottom to the top. And then when I left that company, I was a senior executive for one of our plants, our divisions. I answered to the president. I had three departments of people that I was responsible for. It was all the trappings of thinking that these are things that you wanted, the jet, the cigars, the late nights with the guys and all of that. And it was what I thought I wanted. And then I realized that I was miserable. And then 26 years ago, I had something happen to me that completely not only unraveled me, but changed my life. And one Friday evening when I was sitting at home, it was just my ex-wife now and I felt somebody tap me in the back of the head, and I heard a voice say, "It's time to go home." And I looked over and I said, "What the F are we doing here?" And she said, "I'm not sure." And I literally walked into my boss's office the next morning, and I quit my job and I moved back to Hawaii. So after being gone for almost 25 years, I moved home for 4 years, 4.5 years. I didn't do anything. I'm writing a book, and we can talk about that later. But in the book, I said I would make my cup of coffee. I would walk across the dirt road that was in front of my house, and I would sit underneath a coconut tree. And I had one of those big wire spool tables that I would sit my coffee cup on, and I would just stare at the ocean, because the house that I lived in was really not a house, but it was a 20 by 20 tin shack with a tin roof and no windows and no electricity and no running water. So I went from having all of that to literally living barely living, I would say.
Yeah.
And in those 4.5 years, though, it was dumping the life because when I heard that voice, that was the first time I had heard that was my ancestors talking to me. And I kind of had a feeling that something was happening a few years before that, but didn't understand how that was happening. So it was almost like I would say that it was a crisis intervention that they did, and they said, "You need to change your life. You need to change it now before something drastic happens." And
Right.
so the tap in the head was, in some ways, the wake up call. And from that wake up call, going back to Hawaii and then slowly starting to understand, oh yeah, there you have this lineage, these people that most people think are you're crazy because there's voices, that your ancestors are talking to you, telling you about other people, which makes it seem even more crazy. And yet those are the things that happen. And so over the past 25 years is understanding that process, learning what that meant, learning how to support other people as they move through their journeys, and it puts me here.
Oh my gosh, you summarized it almost too fast. So, in that last 25 years, what did this start to evolve for it to be an actual business for you? Because being able to just listen to those voices or your ancestors, or to formulate a plan so that you could make this plan of attack for other people to be able to help them, right?
Yeah, first and foremost, it was getting over my resistance to doing that. I'm barely able to take care of myself. Well, how can I help other people? And as that process continued and started to move, then I realized at first, for the first, I would say 10, 12 years of me doing this, 15 years, I was a body worker. So I learned the traditional art of lomi lomi, which is a style of massage that's from Hawaii. And I did that, and as I kept doing the massage work over and over and over again, when I started to realize that I was doing more work before people got on the table. And so one day, again, hearing that the I guess you would say a download, and they said, "You don't actually need to put people on the table. You can just talk to them and walk them through what was going on." And I said, "Okay, let me try that." And so I did. And as that got stronger and I got more used to it, then about 7 years ago, they said, "Okay, good. Now that you understand this, you have to understand that your community is not local but global. So guess what? You're going to start doing this remotely." And I was like,
There you go.
"Yeah, right." But they saw something coming that I didn't, because by the end of 2019, I would say 8 months before COVID hit, I was completely online, completely doing remote work, and so that was all clients were remote. And then so when COVID hit and everybody was freaking out, that literally was my best year because I was already set up. Personally, I've had a Zoom account since 2015, and so I knew what Zoom was, and everybody was going, "Oh my God, learning curve. What do we do? What do we do?"
Right?
And I was already there. So that has helped me really become global, because at any one time I may have clients on 3 or 4 continents.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, for me, the journey is amazing because it took me to lots of different places, and it put me in front of some amazing people and some amazing teachers. And um, yeah, if we had time, I would tell you more about that story, because this is a beautiful story that was built on a lot of synchronicities.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got like 12 minutes left. So, like, tell some of the story. I want to hear it all. I'm going to take a sip of water. Keep going.
After I moved to back to Hawaii, my marriage eventually fell apart. It was falling apart before that. I was married for 23 years, and I would say that about 13 of that, I knew that it wasn't working, but I was just too afraid to leave. And as this started happening, we got back to Hawaii. She thought this is the lifestyle she wanted because I had met her in Hawaii when we were in the Navy together. But when she got back, she realized, oh no, I don't want to live like this. And so marriage fell apart. I gave all my money away that I had built up, the stocks and the 401ks, and I wasn't paying attention, and it all disappeared. So part of that process inside of that was the breakdown of letting go of an old way of life and an old way of thinking. And the marriage fell apart literally within a few months. met someone who was from New Zealand that said, "Oh, come back to New Zealand with me. Let's go there for 3 months." Well, I went to New Zealand for 3 months, ended up staying there for 5.5 years. I got full residency. I was on my way to becoming a New Zealand citizen. And then the ancestors came back. The Hawaiians call them you kupuna, which are your ancestors. The kupuna said, "Okay, you have to go home." And I was against coming home because my God, New Zealand was the life that I wanted. I had friends. Was doing the things that I wanted. I was doing my healing work. I was surfing, 3, 4 times a week, which is like nobody knows this, but some of the best waves in the world are there, and it's consistent. And and so it was that life. But I came home, and you asked me about how do I know about the generations? Well, I have a cousin that did our genealogy, and she went back 16 generations in her genealogical research, which I thought was phenomenal. And one of the reasons why I went back to Hawaii was because we had a family reunion. And at the reunion, I have it here because I keep it and look at it every day. Everybody was given this booklet, this pamphlet that she had put together, and it has all of the ancestors that went back 16 generations. And then I had remembered that years before that, I had read a book by a 19th century historian, Hawaiian historian, and I recognized the last name that was in the book. So I went to that book and I did the research, and I went back former generations. And then I heard a voice again that said, "How much do we have to prove to you that this is who you are?"
Right.
Like, okay. And then about a week later, it said, "Guess what? Now that you understand all of this, you can't go back to New Zealand. You have to move to the mainland."
Mm.
And so I was against that. So I did, I think part of our lives is working through the resistance and the fears that we have. And so there's a lot of resistance and fear because
Art.
these are
So much of
all,
our life.
oh my gosh,
Yeah, I'm still going through stuff. It's like it crops up constantly, right?
it pops up constantly. And eventually I broke down. And again, the way things were, you meet someone that says, "Come to Seattle." So I moved to Seattle, and then uh, I'm there a couple weeks, and this man calls me out of the blue who I'd met in Hawaii like years before, and he says, "No, you come to Portland." So I moved to Portland, and I'm living in Portland for a few years, and then I meet my current wife there. And so, had I not done all those things or been in Portland, we wouldn't have met. And that was the last 15 years. Next month, we've been married 15 years now.
Oh,
So
congrats.
that's
That's
been this
awesome.
beautiful journey of that. And the whole time we're looking at these things and looking at my past and how do I create or how do I come to terms or realize how the events of my life, basically my childhood, it has in some ways evolved into the person that I am, and where are those pieces that evolution may have gone in a way that I wasn't supporting myself or seeing myself in a very good light. And so as I work through those pieces and I start to see them in other people, which I think is one of the reasons that makes me a good practitioner because of all of, excuse my language, the crap I've been through.
Right? So, what is it whenever you decide to do what you do, you become an actual practitioner? What does that take? Like, I know in the States you have to do 20,000 hours or something silly for,
Well, it's an interesting thing because once I started saying yes, then the easiest way for me to explain it, and because I don't understand a lot of times what I do, because there's information that comes to me that no real regular human being should understand or know. And so when I see it, it looks to me like this, that there's an apex and I'm standing at the apex of this triangle that goes back behind me. And all of that are my ancestors and my guides and my people that support me in the work that I do. And when I'm sitting in front of someone, whatever the message is, whoever that person is steps up and they kind of whisper in my ear and they go, ask them about why they hid in their closet when they were 5 years old, or how come they played a lot in the woods by themselves, or tell me about that yellow dress that you really, really loved, and things like that. And so when those things show up and I start talking about that, then people, I don't say validate, but then they go, "Oh my God, how did you know that?" And I go, I don't know. It just happened,
I don't know. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yet at the same time, energetically, what happens is the body reads that. This wasn't a lot of formal education. It was more, the more I opened up to understanding and allowing that energy to move through me, the the easier it became for me to do the work. And then at some point, I remember somebody getting off my table years ago and said, "Oh, this is epigenetic work." And I didn't even know what epigenetics was. And so I went, "Okay." And I smiled and I said, "Okay." And then I went, maybe I should go check what that is. And so then I started reading up and I went, "Oh, wait a minute. It would be good for me to understand the science of cellular memory, the science of epigenetics, the science of changing DNA structure." Because when I do the work that I do, when healing practitioners, especially good ones, do the work that they do on a quantum level, because this is quantum work. What we're doing is we're changing the vibration and frequency inside of a person's body. And if we're talking
Mm.
about trauma, or we're talking about serious issues that have happened in lives, or we're talking about generational programming, like we started with, right? The trauma, not only is it visible or recognizable, but as we touch that place and the trauma gets resolved and the vibration and the frequency change, I've literally watched the genetic structure inside of somebody change, which means that if there was trauma in this person, as that trauma gets cleared, it gets cleared not only in them, but in the family that's around them in that generation. And it also clears, I've watched it clear backwards. Mm, in indigenous cultures, they say 7 generations forward, 7 generations back. And I've watched it change because some people come to me and said, "I don't want my children to keep carrying the pain and the suffering that I've been carrying." And so in that way, so understanding the science behind it, which now I realize that part of the work is neuroscience, because what we're doing is changing synaptic connections and literally, like Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, rewiring the brain.
Man, this is so cool. I love hearing all this. I know we could talk forever. Tell me, you're doing well in your work, and it's still a lot of work because you put in so much of your own private time to be as best as you are for your clients. Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep showing up? Why do you keep caring?
I see I had a teacher. She was a teacher and kind of a mentor years ago. And she said, "We are like the paratroopers that drop behind the lines, the enemy lines, to make sure that everything's safe." And so if we're looking at humanity, I'm looking at this as a way of my contributing to the shift inside of humanity's consciousness. That's like the high range piece. But when I'm working with people, it's when they get to the place where they realize, "Oh, it's the choices that I made that put me in this place. I can see that now." People talk about the light going on in people's eyes, but when I see the light go on in people's eyes, I also see the light come on inside of their bodies too. But when I see that light come on in their bodies, and they get to a place where they go, "Got it. I understand this now. And now I have the power to change this myself." Because true healing work is not going to somebody to do something for you. A good practitioner will take you on a journey, and the journey takes you to the places where you get to see what's going on, and then you get to make the choices. Because when you make the choices, you become empowered. And when you become empowered, the changes are permanent, more and so for
Wow.
me, my passion is watching that and watching how people's lives change as they start to make those changes, self-confidence, empowerment, um, ability to move through their resistance and their fears, and all of that. And then at the same time, I'm human and I go through all of that myself.
Right, right. Oh my goodness. Okay, at this point, people are thinking, I want to know you. I want to talk to you more about this. I want to get you to know you better. What's your favorite way for people to come find you?
If two ways. If you go to my website, which is www.jameskawainui.com, You'll find information there, and you can reach out and schedule some time, or you can just write me. I mean, seriously, James at jameskawainui.com. And I will, before I work with anyone, there's always a conversation that I have, because I want to be able to know what's going on. And that gives me an understanding and the guideline of how I can support you. And so I will talk to anybody for free for 30 minutes.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we blew through our whole 30 minutes. I only have 2 questions left. Tell me what is next? What's on the horizon?
There's a couple things that are on the horizon. I just started a new endeavor at the beginning of the year, and it's something that I've been doing for years, but I had never quite formalized it. And it's called Red Rock Property Reset. And basically, it's a clearing service where I work with homeowners and realtors or realty companies to come in and reset the energy of your home or your business. You know, homes, just like human beings, hold memory. And I don't know if you've ever walked into places like that, but you walk into some place and you feel the energy. And so for a realtor, or for somebody that's trying to put a house on the market, what you want is a buyer to walk in to be able to feel like it could be their space. Because if they walk in and they feel the energy of something else that's there, it's less likely that they're going to go, oh yeah, this is a nice place for me, and we can do this. And I've been doing this for years. And in Hawaii, they do it as a matter of course. Every new home or every new business gets a blessing of that kind, and an energy reset. And so inside of this reset is creating whatever you want to be able to create, health, vitality, success inside of that space. I help infuse that space with that. That's one of the pieces, and I'm at the last piece. Is I am final edits before it actually goes to the editor for the edits. Is I'm writing a book on a traditional practice of something that's called oponopono. For those of you who don't understand it, it's a way of resolving conflict. Um, the process in ancient times is about resolving conflict outside of you, but really, the more you resolve the conflicts that are happening internally in your life, the more your life around you shifts. So I'm in the process of finishing that book, and with the book is workshops and retreats. And I love to teach, and so anytime I get to share in this way, in this format, through a podcast or on a stage with people, that lights me up.
Yeah. Man, that's so cool. All right, last question, and it's really the shining nugget, the golden nugget. What do we end the show with that you wanna leave everybody with?
We didn't get to talk about this at all in the show, but this is something that I really want to leave everybody with. I guess I would say suggestion is to be able to look at your life and then see if you can do just this one thing, or actually two. To be able to watch yourselves and listen to yourself as you go through your day, and listen to all the disparaging words that you use to describe yourself and the world around you, and to actively commit to changing that. Because we use so many disparaging words to describe ourselves, and so we become our worst enemies. And then the other part of that, which kind of goes along with it, is that to actually watch the level of self-judgment that you have in your life. Because if you actually see the level of self-judgment and self-criticism, we start to realize why we short ourselves and why we don't achieve some of the things that we want to achieve. But if you did those two things, I'm not going to guarantee you that your life is going to change, but I definitely say that it will.
There's definitely gonna be some change. It might be small, but it really, quite honestly, should be huge. This is so great. I'm so happy that we got to spend time, and thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for your time. And everybody else, thank you so much for coming and listening. I appreciate you watching all of our shows, and then I'll see everybody on the next episode. So, bye-bye for now. Have a great day.
Aloha, everyone.